I watched him through the glass wall. Brent Halverson, all teeth and swagger, holding court like he owned the place. 3 weeks in, and the guy was already tossing around terms like synergy and resource dilution. Probably thought legacy was a malware variant. Meanwhile, I stood by the elevator with my cardboard box, the same elevator I once helped wire the keycard system for, back when we ran Marotech out of a goddamn strip mall storage unit that still smelled like latex printer ink and takeout lo mein. He didn't even make eye contact. Just flicked his pen, said, "Your position is eliminated. Security will walk you out," like he was ordering a sandwich. And I just smiled. Signed the HR form with the same hand that signed the seed funding check that bought this company its first servers. Nobody in that room remembered. Hell, most of them probably thought I was some harmless middle manager who ran workshops about active listening and corporate empathy. Joke's on them. I was the reason we even had middle management. Before we go further, do me a small favor. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe. It means a lot to the team that brings these wild rides to life. 17 years of silent legacy deserve a little noise. I wasn't always in the shadows. Back in the early days, I was everywhere. Wiring LAN switches, whiteboarding org charts, sitting on folding chairs at 2 a.m. haggling with venture partners over equity points like we were trading baseball cards. But after our third funding round, I stepped back. Deliberately. Let the founders shine. Let the CEO pose for Tech Weekly with his visionary hair. I didn't want the spotlight. I wanted the roots. So I converted my stake into silent equity, kept a modest title, director of training, then started building the kind of cultural foundation that actually keeps a company standing when the money stops flowing. Mentorship, growth budgets, internal apprenticeships, not sexy stuff. But it worked. I pushed through the Dev-to-Lead Bridge program, got 6 underdogs promoted in 2 years, taught folks how to communicate with users instead of just pushing hotfixes and praying. Brent? He waltzed in with his polished loafers and a PowerPoint template and called it all HR bloat. Said the future was automation, not alignment. Said my department was unscalable. So I let him think I was just another relic, something to be quietly archived. I took the walk with security, past the framed awards, past the mural that literally has my face on it in a crowd shot from our Series A party. Nobody noticed. That's the trick about becoming a ghost in your own company. You learn who's watching, and more importantly, who isn't. Truth is, I'd already felt it coming. The budget freezes, the skipped invites, the training doesn't generate revenue comments muttered in quarterly ops calls like gospel. But I'd weathered worse. Acquisition storms, cash flow crises, even the great server room flood of 2011 when we damn near lost everything. This was just a dumb kid mistaking the blueprints for scrap paper. On the ride down, the guard tried to make small talk. I didn't blame him. Tony's a good guy, did his job with quiet dignity. I told him not to worry. Told him I'd see him soon, and not in a weird haunt your dreams way either. Just see you soon. By Monday, they'd learn the truth. I might have stepped out the front door. But the company, it never stopped being mine. They announced it with the kind of sterile optimism that always precedes a bloodbath. Leadership realignment for strategic growth. Translation? New execs with sharper suits and shallower roots were about to descend like corporate termites. The email came on a Tuesday. By Thursday, the first heads were already rolling. Whole departments shifted overnight. Facilities folded under ops. HR got rebranded People Ops. And my team? Well, we weren't mentioned at all, which was louder than any name drop. Enter Brent Halverson, the new COO straight out of central casting for smug disruptor. Mid-30s, MBA from some school that cares more about legacy donations than legacy code, and the kind of guy who pronounces GIF with a hard G like it's a flex. First thing he did was call an alignment breakfast. No bagels, no coffee, just a 2-hour monologue about streamlining inefficiencies and cutting fat. Apparently, I was the fat. He didn't say it outright, but he didn't need to. Kept using phrases like unbillable overhead and soft value initiatives, all while staring directly at me like I was a malfunctioning fax machine he couldn't wait to unplug. When he finally did address my department, it was with that tight-lipped smirk people wear right before they call you redundant. Training is important, he said, nodding like he meant it. but we need to reevaluate priorities. We're not in the business of coddling underperformers with soft skill seminars. Ah, so that's how he saw it. 17 years of building infrastructure for talent development reduced to coddling. I just smiled and nodded back, let him dig his own grave, one recycled buzzword at a time. Then the real tells started to creep in. Meeting invites stopped landing in my inbox. Strategy memos would go out with my team's name conveniently omitted. When I asked about budget for the fall mentorship cohort, the response came 3 days late and 2 words short. On hold. Worse still, my peers started walking on eggshells. Susan from finance wouldn't look me in the eye anymore, and James from legal, who once asked me to godparent his Labrador, suddenly forgot to CC me on policy reviews I used to vet. It was subtle at first, but like mold behind drywall, it spread fast. The final straw? Brent sent a company-wide survey about maximizing operational impact. One question: which departments provide the least measurable value to your daily workflow? No anonymity, no tact. Just open hunting season for every middle manager who wanted to look busy without actually producing anything. Still, I didn't flinch. I'd seen this kind of rot before. Executive tourism, where the new guy thinks his fresh eyes see deeper than everyone else's years in the trenches. The arrogance isn't new. What's dangerous is when it comes with authority and no memory. I'll give him this. Brent had guts. Takes a certain level of blind confidence to try to scrub out the one department that touches every promotion path, every leadership track, every retention pivot we've ever executed. But that's what happens when you think history started the day you arrived. I started documenting everything, every skipped invite, every budget denial, every conversation cut short mid-sentence when I walked into a room. Not because I planned to sue. Please, lawsuits are for people who don't have better weapons. No, I was patient, not because I'm passive, but because when you've built the walls yourself, you don't panic when someone tapes over the floor plan. I was just waiting for him to bring scissors to a gunfight. They always do it on Fridays, like the corporate equivalent of taking the trash out before the weekend. Less drama, fewer witnesses, no time for anyone to raise a stink. I'd seen enough layoffs in my time to recognize the pattern, the sudden calendar invite with no subject, the "can you pop in real quick" message from HR, the way everyone avoids eye contact like you're contagious. So when my phone buzzed at 3:17 p.m. with a meeting scheduled in room 4C, I didn't even blink. Just closed the training budget spreadsheet I'd been working on, slid my notebook into the drawer, and stood up slow enough to savor it. Brent was already in the room when I walked in, pretending to look busy on his phone. There was no chair pulled out for me. Classic. The HR rep, Mina, poor thing, sat stiff as drywall, eyes bouncing between her clipboard and the existential dread of complicity. Brent didn't bother with a greeting. "Elliot," he said, drawing out the syllables like he was trying them on for size. "We've completed a strategic review of internal operations, and it's become clear that your role no longer aligns with our forward vision. Effective immediately, your position has been eliminated. No, thank you. No, regret to inform." Just a script he'd probably practiced in front of a mirror. He kept going, citing redundant resource allocation, misaligned spend, and my personal favorite, a disproportionate focus on non-revenue generating activities. I half expected a PowerPoint to drop from the ceiling. Mina slid the paperwork toward me with a pen already uncapped. "We've included a severance package reflecting your tenure," she mumbled, like it was a mercy. I picked up the pen. Clicked it once, clicked it again. Brent shifted like the chair had gone cold. "You do realize," I said, "that training and development reduces churn by 32% and correlates directly with retention of high performers?" Brent blinked. "We're shifting to a performance-first model." I nodded. Signed. No hesitation. He smiled like he'd just beaten the final boss. "Security is waiting outside to help with your things." I capped the pen and placed it gently on the stack. Then I looked up, really looked at him, the way a demolition crew might look at a condemned building before setting the charges. "Do whatever you need to," I said. "I'm looking forward to properly introducing myself at Monday's board meeting." Brent froze. His eyebrows did a little twitch like he wasn't sure if I was threatening him or just malfunctioning. Mina's eyes darted up for the first time, but I didn't give her anything else to read. I walked out without another word. Security, Tony again, stood by the elevator like we were meeting for coffee, not a farewell. He gave me a nod. I nodded back. As he walked me to the exit, he asked if I needed a cart for my things. No need, I said. I've been packing for years. Truth is, I didn't take a single thing. Left my laptop, my notebooks, even the mug with the faded "training is not optional" slogan. I wanted Brent to see it all Monday morning and wonder if I'd forgotten something. Let him believe, just for a minute, that I was careless, that maybe he'd actually won. Let him enjoy the silence of victory before the thunderclap. Saturday morning, Brent sent a selfie to the leadership Slack, shirtless on a golf course, some neon drink in hand with the caption, "New era, clean slate. No more fluff." I wasn't in the Slack anymore, of course. But when you build the firewall, you learn where the mirrors are. A former mentee from legal forwarded it to me with a simple note. They have no idea, do they? No, they didn't. That same morning, Brent held a strategy prep Zoom with his hand-picked clique. 4 department heads he'd fast-tracked for their promotions, plus the external consultant he called our culture alignment guru. From the transcript, yes, I had it. It went something like, "Old guard's out. Training was just a dinosaur nest. Monday's going to be about speed, profitability, and decisive energy. We present the Q3 realignment plan, fast-track hiring for ops roles, and formally dissolve L&D by end of month. Clean. Efficient." Then came the laughter. Real knee-slapping, martini-stirring laughter. One of them joked about turning my old office into a meditation pod. Another asked if I'd cried. Cute. While they were playing CEO cosplay, I was in a different kind of room. Cool, dim, quiet. My attorney Melinda sat across from me, reading through documents in latex gloves like we were handling radioactive material. Technically, we were. Buried in a safety deposit box I hadn't touched in 9 years were the originals, signed, notarized, and dated the week Merotech first got funding from Alan Seligman, our original angel. Back then, I didn't want board visibility. Didn't want my name splashed across pitch decks or press releases. I just wanted control, the quiet kind. So we drafted an agreement. A trust structure split across 3 entities, all routing back to me with 51% voting rights preserved through an evergreen clause tied to IP ownership. They never dissolved the clause, never even read it after the Series C reshuffle. The current CEO assumed the cap table was clean. He was wrong. Melinda confirmed it all. We even ran a test vote through the proxy system. Valid, active, legally binding, and most importantly, undeniable. I drafted 1 email, just one. Short, clinical, direct. Dear board members, per our charter and Schedule A of the original incorporation framework, I will be exercising my voting rights during Monday's board meeting. Agenda item 1, ownership structure. Regards, Elliot Brooks. I blind copied every voting member, including Seligman, who still held a ceremonial seat. No fluff, no threats, just a reminder. By noon, 3 board members had replied, all variations of understood. One sent a thumbs up emoji. Another asked if I'd need extra time on the agenda. The one I didn't hear from? CEO Mark Dunleavy, which made sense. He was probably too busy trying to remember who the hell I really was. By Sunday night, the Slack channels were lit up. I wasn't there to see them, but I knew the signs. Texts started flying. Why did Elliot email the board? Do we need legal in the room? Wait, does he still own equity? No answers, just questions. Exactly where I wanted them. Meanwhile, Brent sent out a company-wide teaser about new directions being announced Monday. Called it a Growth Alignment Summit. Even added a branded Zoom background. He was dressing up for a party he didn't realize he wasn't hosting, and I'd already picked out the music. Let the curtain stay closed for 1 more day. After all, timing is everything, and I'd been waiting 17 years to say my first real hello. Brent strutted into the boardroom like he'd just gotten off a TED stage, hair slicked, custom blazer screaming disruptive leadership, and a folder under his arm labeled Q3 turnaround plan, like it was some manifesto. He even gave the chair a wink. A wink. The man had the audacity of a golden retriever who just pissed on a Ming vase and expected praise for hydration. The room, however, didn't meet him with applause. It was quiet. Not tense, not hostile. Just still. controlled like the second before a conductor raises the baton. 3 of the board members were already seated, stone-faced. One glanced down at his phone the moment Brent stepped in, thumb tapping, jaw tight. Seligman, the old dog, leaned back in his chair like he'd been waiting for this show all year. Brent pulled his chair out with flair. Excited to walk everyone through our refreshed structure, he began, flipping open his folder. Today is about lean thinking and bold moves. The chair held up a hand. Before we begin, he said calmly, Elliot, would you like to speak? Brent paused mid-sentence, lips parted. He glanced around the table like someone had just invited a janitor to address the shareholders. I stood slowly, didn't rush it. Didn't smile either, just the kind of calm they mistake for fragility until they realize the floor has been pulled out from under them. I placed 3 documents gently on the polished oak table. No slideshow, no theatrics, just ink, signatures, and the undeniable weight of legal memory. Document 1, I said, sliding the first forward, is the original shareholder ledger from year 1. It reflects my seed investment recorded under the Seligman Trust vehicle and subsequently converted to equity. Brent let out a quiet, confused laugh. No one joined him. Document 2, I continued, tapping the second page, is the voting rights agreement tied to that equity. It includes the evergreen clause, still valid, granting majority voting rights through proxy when certain IP thresholds are met. Which, Seligman chimed in, they were, years ago. Correct, I nodded. Which brings us to document 3, the current structure of the trust entities all consolidated and all pointing back to me. Together, they control a 51.2% voting bloc. The room didn't explode. It inhaled, a collective intake of breath so sharp it nearly whistled. Brent blinked. Once. Twice. That's not possible. We've updated the cap table 6 times since... You've updated the visible cap table, I said. The trust filings were never contested, and as per the incorporation agreement, they supersede internal edits unless ratified unanimously, which they weren't. Ever. The company counsel, bless her, was already flipping through a folder, scanning for a lifeline she wouldn't find. The chair simply leaned back and said, We've reviewed everything. It's valid. Brent's hand gripped the folder in front of him so tight the corners started to crumple. You mean to tell me, he hissed, that the training guy owns the place? I finished. Yes. Quietly. Intentionally. Permanently. There was a pause. Not silence, just absence. The absence of control Brent thought he had. The absence of leverage. The absence of a plan that accounted for ghosts with keys to the vault. You made a mistake, I said, meeting his eyes flat and unflinching. You thought the job made the man, but some of us built the place while you were still Googling how to write a mission statement. And just like that, Brent Halverson stopped being a force of nature and became a man who didn't know what room he'd walked into. He had entered expecting a pitch meeting. Instead, he was the topic of discussion. Brent scrambled for words like a man trying to catch confetti in a wind tunnel. This is insane, he finally snapped, voice climbing an octave higher than it should have been in a room with mahogany walls and legacy echoes. Those shares are from a different era, pre-acquisition, pre-realignment. Hell, they're probably in paper form, aren't they? He laughed nervously. No one joined in. I didn't flinch. They are, I said. Filed, notarized, and authenticated. But more importantly, they're current. Every single transfer, every proxy update, every trust reconsolidation, documented, filed with the Delaware Division of Corporations, and renewed as recently as last year. He turned to General Counsel like she might toss him a life preserver. She didn't. I'd like confirmation, he demanded, pointing at the papers still laid out like a slow-motion car crash. Counsel cleared her throat, adjusted her glasses, and spoke the sentence that finished peeling the skin off his illusion. Everything appears valid, legally binding. The voting structure is intact. Elliot's authority is indisputable under the current governance model. Brent's mouth opened, closed. He looked like someone who just realized the elevator he stepped into wasn't going up. You can't just show up after hiding for years, and I didn't hide, I cut in, calm but firm. I stepped back. There's a difference. He shook his head. a soft desperation now leaking into his voice. Why would anyone give control to someone who doesn't even participate in operations anymore? I raised an eyebrow. Control isn't a calendar invite, Brent. It's ownership, and ownership doesn't expire just because you don't recognize the name on the door. The boardroom was silent, except for the low hum of the recessed lighting. Brent's posture had shifted. No more confident lean, no smirk, just tension. His hand hovered above the table like he was deciding whether to grab his folder or just fold entirely. "You had a chance," I said, "to learn what made this place run. You could have asked questions, read the charter, understood the layers before you started pruning the roots." He didn't respond, so I gave him the final nudge. "You made a mistake," I said, leaning in just enough that the words landed like stones. "You thought the job made the man, but some of us built the place while you were still in business school, learning how to fake confidence on a balance sheet." One board member let out an exhale, quiet but unmistakable. Another tapped their pen slowly against their notepad. They all knew. They'd seen this before, people confusing position with power, flash with foundation. And they all knew what came next. The chair finally spoke. "We'll move to an executive session. Mr. Halverson will need the room." Brent hesitated. "Now," the chair added. Brent gathered his things like he didn't trust any of it was still his. The door opened with a whisper, and he stepped out with all the momentum of a punctured balloon. The door clicked shut behind him. I sat down, straightened the documents, folded my hands, and the board turned to me, not as the training guy, not as the old guard, but as the man who still held the keys. The notice went out by 3 p.m. that same Monday. Brent Halverson, COO, will be taking an immediate leave of absence pending internal review. No fluff. No thanks for your service paragraph. Just a sterile one-liner sent from legal's shared inbox. HR didn't even bother updating his photo on the org chart. They just grayed it out like a dead SIM card. No all-hands meeting. No send-off cupcakes in the break room. The man who walked in with a 5-year roadmap walked out before finishing his second month. The security guard, same one who'd walked me out on Friday, stood by again. This time, he didn't look confused. He looked satisfied. I didn't reclaim my old office right away. Spent a few hours walking the halls instead, nodding at familiar faces. Some smiled back, cautiously. Others kept their heads down. You could feel it in the air, that post-storm silence where everyone's waiting to see which direction the wind's going to blow next. But I wasn't there to make speeches or hang banners. I wasn't interested in vindication tours. I had work to do. First thing, I didn't reopen the training department. I let that confuse people. They whispered, speculated. Is he shutting it down for good? Is he bringing in his own team? But I wasn't looking backward. Brent had scorched more than budgets in his short tenure. He'd contaminated decision-making with ego and gutted good people just to feed his quarterly optics. I wasn't here to restore what was lost. I was here to make sure that kind of stupidity never took root again. I requested a full audit of every termination Brent had approved in his 6-week reign. Legal and HR met me in the small glass conference room at the end of the executive wing, the one with the frosted panels and the bad lighting. Pull everything, I said. Emails, memos, verbal justifications, severance terms. I want timelines, correspondence logs, Slack threads, everything he touched. There was a pause. Then one of the HR leads, Michelle, who'd survived 4 COOs and still wore orthopedic shoes like armor, nodded. "We'll get you what you need." What came back wasn't surprising, but it was uglier than I expected. Quiet terminations masked as voluntary departures. Budget cuts that somehow only targeted women, older employees, or anyone who disagreed with Brent in a meeting. One dismissal was labeled as performance inconsistency, but the guy had exceeded targets for 12 straight quarters. Another file had been edited after signature Red Flag City. I called in the board's internal ethics liaison. We spent 2 days reconstructing every paper trail Brent thought he'd buried. Some were sloppy, others were intentional. All of them were rotten. I didn't publicize the findings, didn't need to. Quiet justice is still justice. By Wednesday, a few of Brent's closest allies had already cleared their desks. No exit memos, no tearful goodbyes. One of them left a stress ball on her keyboard with a sticky note that said simply, Wrong team. I kept it. Put it in my drawer. I made it clear there would be no witch hunts, no grand vendettas, just accountability. If you stayed, you worked. If you conspired, you left. If you covered for him, I already knew. I wasn't rebuilding a kingdom. I was disinfecting a wound. And you don't heal infection with applause. You do it with a scalpel and silence. My name was on the paperwork now. And the company, it would run on foundation, not flash. That meant some people were going to be very uncomfortable. Good. I didn't hold a town hall, didn't stand on a stage with a mic clipped to my lapel, spewing mission statements or buzzwords about vision and culture. We'd all been overdosed on that under Brent. The last thing this place needed was another man confusing volume for leadership. Instead, I sent out one company-wide email, plain text, no banner, no signature flourish. Subject, mandates and continuity. Body, effective immediately, mentorship programs will be reinstated with direct reporting to the board. All performance evaluations will incorporate team building and knowledge sharing metrics. A founder-alumni advisory board is being assembled. Former builders will have a voice again. Promotions will be paused for 30 days while departmental structures are reviewed for fairness, equity, and long-term scalability. The term non-revenue generating will no longer be used to describe departments that support people. No Q&A session, no open forum. You'll see the changes, or you won't last. Elliot Brooks, majority shareholder. Some said it was cold. I called it efficient. A company bleeding from surface wounds doesn't need warm blankets. It needs antiseptic and a steady hand. The next morning, I walked into the first advisory roundtable and nodded to James from legal, Susan from finance, and Neil from R&D, all original staff, all survivors. Across from them sat two ex-employees I'd personally asked to return, one who'd been pushed out by Brent, another who'd resigned after 3 years of watching mediocrity fail upward. We're not here to reminisce, I said. We're here to recalibrate. We forgot who we were. Let's remember. Together. The whole meeting took 45 minutes, but by the end, everyone had a task, a timeline, and one shared expression. Relief. By Thursday, the whispers had started. That's him. That's the guy Brent fired. No way, he owns the company? My God, I thought he just ran workshops or something. I heard them. In elevators, in stairwells, on Slack, where someone had made a new emoji of me holding a gavel. I didn't comment. Didn't need to. Let them talk. One night, I stayed late, lights off, just the glow of my screen and the echo of my own typing in an empty floor. And as I walked through the hall, I passed that mural again, the old Series A photo blown up to 30 feet wide. My younger self stood near the edge of the crowd in that photo, face half obscured by shadow, no spotlight, no trophy pose, just a faint smile and tired eyes, still there, still watching. That's when it hit me. I hadn't changed. The company had. But now it was learning to remember, not with slogans, not with slide decks, but with structure, with roots. We weren't going back to the way things were. We were going forward, this time with someone who knew where the cracks were buried and had already started pouring the cement. It was a Tuesday when the board made it official. The memo dropped at 9:03 a.m. sharp. No build-up, no grand theatrics. Just one clean subject line, leadership update, COO transition. HR followed up with a canned internal blurb about differences in strategic direction and new opportunities ahead. But everyone knew what it meant. Brent Halverson had been relieved of duty. No title, no handshake, not even a LinkedIn endorsement from the CEO. At 9:17, he was escorted to the elevator. Same hallway, same click of the badge scanner, same security guard, Tony, whose posture always said more than his mouth. Brent didn't carry much, just a slim black laptop case and what I assumed was the remnants of a career he thought he could build off of buzzwords and backstabbing. I watched from the boardroom, coffee in hand, arms crossed. No words, no nod, just presence. Tony glanced up as they passed. Our eyes met for half a second. His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but something close to knowing. Brent didn't look in my direction, didn't even acknowledge the room he'd tried to own just a week prior. Maybe he knew, maybe he didn't. But the doors closed behind him with the soft hiss of inevitability. And just like that, the era of swagger and spreadsheets was over. I turned back toward the table. On it sat a manila folder, thick and slightly worn, labeled in neat block letters. Succession Planning, Phase 2. Inside were notes, timelines, transition frameworks, not for me, but for what came next. Because I wasn't here to rule. I was here to rebuild quietly, deliberately, and with the kind of foresight the Brent Halversons of the world would never understand. That folder didn't list titles. It listed traits: resilience, accountability, vision, and underlined in red, humility over hype. I didn't plan to hold the reins forever. Legacy isn't about permanence, it's about scaffolding something that doesn't collapse when you step away. Later that day, I walked the floor one more time. A new cohort of hires had just finished orientation. One of them, fresh out of grad school, was asking where the coffee machine was. Someone pointed to me and said, "Ask him. He knows everything." The kid blinked. "You work here?" I smiled. Something like that. He chuckled awkwardly and thanked me before heading off. He didn't need to know my name, not yet, but he would feel the weight of what I built. Because if you want to last here, don't just know the rules, know who wrote them.